despite all of the antagonism between Iran and Israel and Iran and the wider region, there have, until a couple of months ago, there had not been direct missile attacks from between Israel and Iran, and that is something that has obviously raised the level of conflict in the region and taken the region to a new level. So there's no guarantee they will not do that. From Iran's point of view, not responding is also dangerous, of course, because if they're seen to take that sort of attack that happened when Ismail Haniyeh was killed, just take it lying down and do nothing to respond, they will see themselves as opening the door to further attacks and endangering their position, quite apart from looking weak to their domestic public opinion and to their proxies and allies in the region.
What do you make of President Biden openly linking the hopes of trying to get some kind of agreement on a ceasefire and a hostage exchange to whether Iran could launch some kind of strike against Israel? Do you think he's right in that assessment?
Yes, well, there clearly are linkages. And the reason why it's so complicated, the situation in such an incredibly dangerous moment in the Middle East, is that there are sort of three things going on at the same time. There's obviously an Israel-Iran de facto conflict and an attempt by each to sort of restore deterrence against the other. That's linked to the Gaza ceasefire track, which of course is international in the negotiations with the US and Qatar and Egypt and others involved. But there's also an Israel-Lebanese Hezbollah track, because of course Hezbollah has also threatened promised retaliation for the assassination of Fuad Shukr, which was the day before the Haniyeh assassination in Tehran. So there is a lot at play here, and I'm absolutely sure that it's right that since Iran is playing quite a weak hand and doesn't have many options, many attractive options for retaliation, that actually it's probably in their interest too, if the ceasefire talks were to progress and they were to be able to say, well, the reason why we're not hitting back right now against Israel is because we want to give the ceasefire track a chance.
Yeah, I mean, as you point out, it is a very complex situation. Iran, of course, a close backer of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but also allied somewhat to Hamas in Gaza. Let me ask you, first of all, about the prospects for those negotiations getting underway. They're due to start tomorrow, and so much hinges on this, doesn't it? Do you think that those negotiations are likely to go ahead? And I mean, I just wonder, we've seen Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, pulling out of his planned trip to the region. Do you think that's a bad sign?
Well, I'm not privy to the inside track of what's happening on these negotiations. They've been on and off for a while, with each side blaming the other. There's clearly a very big push to make them to go ahead now and to make progress. A lot will depend, I think, on whether the structure of the deal that was originally tentatively agreed, or at least put on the table, holds on both sides, and whether Israel is willing to keep to the terms of that agreement, as well as whether Hamas are. It has been very difficult to get this agreement, but there is a lot of pressure because the extent of the human suffering in Gaza is so extreme now, and has become so clear, and is so painful to watch for everyone in the international community. I think that the effort, the diplomatic effort, and the political pressure to get to a ceasefire is really very, very strong now.
And in the meantime, there is growing international pressure, isn't there, on Iran not to launch a reprisal attack against Israel. Of course, Israel took out that senior Hamas leader in Tehran. Ever since then, the whole region has been braced and expecting some kind of retaliation from Iran. We've even had the new British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, actually phoning Iran's new leader to ask him not to carry out those strikes because of the fears that would really escalate the entire conflict, or could do so.
Yes. Well, the Prime Minister's phone call was, of course, to the president of Iran, not the leader, because the supreme leader holds the ultimate power in that country. And that is an important distinction. So, we've seen over the last couple of days, Iran stating that all the European pressure and the international pressure to hold back is illegal, and condemning the efforts to put pressure on them, saying they have a right to retaliate against the provocation of having a civilian leader assassinated in their capital. There's a lot of rhetoric and there's a lot of bluster there. The truth is that Iran does have quite a weak hand. It doesn't have a lot of options available to it, because if it goes for another major attack using ballistic missiles and cruise missiles and drones against Israel, that could either fail to achieve its objectives and look weak, or it could lead to an escalation that's not in Iran's interests. And the same applies to a really massive attack by Lebanese Hezbollah. So it's not as if Iran has a lot of options on the shelf for things that it could do to respond, that it could be sure would not lead to rapid escalation. So Iran's not in a very easy position. In some ways, I can see that it would work for them to stay their hand while ceasefire talks are continuing.
And as you say, Iran has carried out that attack in the past, earlier this year, where it sent a barrage of drones and missiles into Israel, or towards Israel. And Israel, with the support of its allies, in particular the US, was able to deter most of the potential devastation of that attack. And the US has now moved its submarine into the region. I mean, do you think Iran will be wary of launching another attack on Israel, given that backing up Joe Biden's warnings against such a move?
I think it will be wary, but what that April attack did was it obviously removed a taboo that had been in place. I mean, despite all of the antagonism between Iran and Israel, and Iran and the wider region, there have, until a couple of months ago, there had not been direct missile attacks from between Israel and Iran, and that is something that has obviously raised the level of conflict in the region and taken the region to a new level. So there's no guarantee they will not do that. From Iran's point of view, not responding is also dangerous, of course, because if they're seen to take that sort of attack that happened when Ismail Haniyeh was killed, just take it lying down and do nothing to respond, they will see themselves as opening the door to further attacks and endangering their position, quite apart from looking weak to their domestic public opinion and to their proxies and allies in the region.
And so, given the huge problems that are going to beset these negotiations, because we've seen them before, even if they get underway, the difficulties of actually achieving any kind of agreement, and given that need for Iran, if you like, to show to its people that it's not just going to accept such attacks on its soil, how great do you think is the risk at the moment of a further escalation?
I mean, it's incredibly risky. I don't think anyone should downplay that. But the diplomatic effort that's underway to prevent that escalation is both, very intense, but also it's very sophisticated. And I do think that the track through the Gaza negotiations, the ceasefire negotiations, to preventing escalation or putting a stay on the escalation for now is the most optimistic one to play for. I mean, although Iran's support for the Palestinian people is often entirely cynical, ordinary Iranian people do care about what's happening in Palestine, care what's happening in Gaza, and I think it would look good for Iran, both internally and internationally, if it was seen to be trying to create the right conditions for success in those negotiations.
Robert Macaire, former ambassador to Iran. Really good to have your assessment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.